Hello, my friends. Maybe my magical power looks strange, but the Dogman story is more important. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Fact: there are 11 recognized subspecies of tiger. 5 are now extinct. Fact: the Siberian tiger is the largest subspecies. Males average between 400 and 675 pounds. The largest wild specimen weighed in at 845 pounds. Bengals can be close. Their weights overlap, and since there's more of them in closer proximity to humans, there's more likely to be incidents. Tigers have been known to consume close to 90 pounds of meat at one time. The best estimate is an adult tiger kills and eats a deer-sized prey animal about once a week. However, they have been known to take cows and elephant calves. The Champawat tigress had 436 recorded kills. I say recorded because it very likely killed many more people. You see the smart man-eaters? They start slow, they're secretive. They usually start out of desperation, but once they realize how easy it is, they can't stop. I wonder, do you think they get a thrill out of the terror they inflict? I have to believe they do. I mean, it can't be just the act, right? Tons of animal surplus skill. Sorry, for you animal lovers out there, it's the technical term that means killing for fun. From insects to great apes, lots of animals kill other animals for no apparent reason than the thrill of it. They exert massive amounts of energy into taking the life of other creatures. Not for food, not for territory, some of them even torture the other animals first. The Champawat tigress's legend grew so large that after Jim Corbett tracked and killed her, they made him a holy man. Corbett killed several other infamous manhunters with his 7mm. That rifle is still on display, revered by the locals in India. Truth be told, I envy Jim Corbett. Picking up traveling the world hunting monsters. Sounds like quite the life to me. Oh, I'm sorry. You all wanted a story about Dogman, right? Wanted to get your fix of woolly booger before trundling off to bed. Well, all in good time. If you want to know so badly, just skip down a bit. Right now I have some business to attend to. First, I have to get some things off my chest. I feel the need to clarify some things for you. 1. I am incredibly disappointed in the op for such a judgmental title. The monster is really hurtful. I thought we understood each other better than that. 2. To those of you saying, the name should have been bait. If I had known the op was going to share something I thought we had discussed in confidence, or I had written the story, I agree. Bait would have been a better title. If only because airheaded female millennial finally has a purpose seems a bit wordy. Plus, if I had written it, I would have spent a lot more time on my rifles. No one really wanted to hear the yapping of that self-absorbed twit anyway. 3. Some of you are under the mistaken impression that the op is my girlfriend. Sorry, she was my girlfriend. This is incorrect. The op is a friend of mine. One of the few I have, so for him to betray me like that, well, I might just have to plan another hunting trip. I mean, can you imagine? What if he had shared enough details and one of you started hunting my honey hole? Unbelievable. The balls on this guy. 4. If you haven't figured it out by now, this is being dictated. Vicky Smypen's name agreed to dictate this and the rest of the story in part for penance for breaking faith. I shouldn't have to tell him that stories shared between the US are confidential unless I explicitly state otherwise. So Mr. Vicky Smypen's name, what do you have to say for yourself? Please don't make me write this, you know how much I hate getting crazy into other people's stories. Tell them. I'm sorry I told them about your hunting trick. It won't happen again. And I will dictate this word for word just like you wanted. I will finish the story telling them of your great hunting exploits. And? Orcaman man, really? And as penance for breaking faith, I will tell everyone my secret for catching. Really? I wouldn't say insane. Fine. I will tell everyone my secret for catching insane amounts of trout in northern Michigan. I will give 5x directions and also lead him to said fishing hole for trout. Good enough? Well? Natural scent powered and crawlers. It's like trout crack. Ha. I knew you were stacking the deck. The now, not so bad. You're my boy. Don't look so glum. After this, we'll hit a major, grab a bite, and take a few days to go catch a limit of trout. You can navigate us up to that trout pond. I might even tell you about my latest hunt. You can tell me what happened to that attractive you couple I read about. Yeah, it's fine, let's get back to it. I want to get through this quick. I can hear the rods calling me. Now that that's out of the way, some of you have accused me of being a psychopath. In reality, I am probably a high-functioning sociopath. But, if you think I am bad, imagine being friends with this guy. He's so obsessed with horror, he goes around collecting stories from people and gets off knowing he's actually made people scared. Good guy, but maybe a bit of a screw loose. Or heck, maybe I've got one loose. The Dogman sure like to get off by trying to scare people. I'm just here trying to do what I do, and so is he. But, 5x, you can keep your original title. You did promise all those people a proper ending. Lulz. I don't know. I thought it was the natural ending. It was, after all, the last thing she said into the phone before screaming off into the night. I mean, maybe not the ending people were expecting, but it was pretty final. Really surprised how many of the people listening to the story didn't pick up on the fact that your story the message was transcribed from the audio recording on her phone. Of course, I took the phone. I couldn't have someone accidentally catching on to my trick now, could I? That was until all diarrhea of the keyboard over here started blabbing to everyone. Uck, she was so wordy too. I bet you didn't have to do much punch up before you put that one out, did you? I took the phone in order to sever the primary evidence chain. Produce the body. As far as I know, she's just another 411 statistics. But, a sharper than average police detective with that in hand might have made my life difficult for a little while. Do you know why she didn't remember exactly how we met? Because I set it all up, that's why. It was super easy too. I really ought to send Michael Isner and whoever else is at Disney a big fucking thank you card for pretty much putting out a playbook on how to hunt. Sorry, attract certain women. In this age of entitled self-absorbed oversharing princesses, it was ridiculously easy. Do you know the hardest part for me? Finding one that wasn't such a freaking Bambi. For real people, nature isn't green, nature is blood red. If you're reading Dogman stories, I hope you have a good grip on that, cause nobody's coming to save you. Everything in nature kills and eats everything else. Why should people be any different? Times get tough. Bambi eats Thumper. Cryptids need to eat too. Why not a readily available food supply? To be honest, I think they're more territorial anyway. Do you want to lure one out? Want to piss it off enough to hunt or trap it? Better figure out a way to make it so mad it can't think straight and comes after you, or a handy assistant as the case may warrant. Some of you are wondering how I pay for all of this. Well, it's not as hard as you think. Step 1 is to find a lucrative niche, and step 2 is to capitalize. engineers do make pretty good money. I'm exceptionally financially fit thanks to several lucrative patent rights and some smart investing. The last thing, I am disappointed in some of the comments, especially from the people listening. Overall, the readers' comments were better. People reading it for themselves seemed to grasp it better than those who had it read to them. Pursuant to the rules of no sleep, everything Bicky Smypen's name writes is quite true. It just doesn't always happen to him. Sometimes he pieces the stories together from interviews or diaries. Oftentimes he is one of the participants, but he writes himself out. He's made quite the hobby of trying to scare you, so I can understand why he would want to tell about my exploits after all. I hope you can appreciate the great lengths he goes to accurately describe and relate these events to you. Let's see, to sum it all up. Yes, she was the bait. The op conveys true and original material. The story didn't end in the middle. My friend the op ended it there because that is where the recording on her phone ended. He knows the rest of the story, but he gets off on knowing you could be terrified that the monster is still out there and it could be coming for you. That one isn't. It was a rogue, a lone male, good size, not bad for my first cryptid. That one won't be coming after anything, but there are much worse things out there. There's an alpha pack leader up there that made me hire a construction crew to come out and armor up my cabin. Those of you familiar with the siege of Lockett Tranche, that shit ain't going to be happening to me. Maybe at the end of my story, I'll tell the people how to fortify their homes. I do have to say, I'm glad I only had to tango with the one. If it had been that alpha, or even if it had had a mate, well, I don't think I'd be here telling you the rest of this story right now. In any case, let's have some scotch and get back to it. Jesus Christ. Ice and ginger ale in a 15-year-old single malt scotch, and you call me a monster. Well, never mind. Just come on, people want to know about my dangerous game hunts. Fact, in the past half-century there have only been 3 recorded fatal predatory wolf attacks on humans. Fact, the Beast of Givorden is credited with 210 human attacks, 113 victims died, and 98 were devoured. Though the beast was never identified, it was described as a larger-than-average wolf. It was said to be much larger than a wolf, with a reddish coloration and an unbearable smell, as well as teeth bigger than those of a normal wolf. Sound familiar? It too was put down by a better-than-average hunter, Monsieur Jean Chastel. So really, you should be thanking me. France keeps the best records on this, but the Norwegians aren't far behind. A worldwide 2002 study by the Norwegian Institute of Nature Research showed that 90% of victims of predatory wolf attacks were children under the age of 18, especially under the age of 10. In rare cases where adults were killed, the victims were almost always women. Unfortunately, I didn't exactly have somewhere where I could just grab up an orphan or two, now could I? A diminutive female was the next best option, and far less suspicious. Now let me ask you, what do you think it means that wolves are credited with so few fatalities? Do you think these apex predators that competed with us for food for millennia, and that survived with us through the last ice age, just gave up on attacking us? Do you really believe that wolves that continue to plague Eastern Europe and Asia are somehow just so scared of man that they'll leave us alone? Few recorded kills mean one of two things. Either it truly isn't happening, or they're really good at it. Fact, on average there are 90,000 missing persons in the USA at any given time. Fact, Michigan has nearly twice as many missing people per capita as all of its neighboring states. Fact, dead people can't file attack reports. Chastel tracked the beast of Givorden into the mountains. Its stomach still contained the remains of its last human kill. Corbett literally found the Champawat tigress by following the trail of blood and limbs from her latest victim, a teenaged girl. As prolific as those killer beasts were, it was these thoughts that made me wonder how much more prolific would their runs have been had they laid low. If the beasts were tactical enough to cover their tracks, like they were in the beginning, how long could they have gone on for? If they hadn't grown so brazen, how many people could they have continued to prey upon? Why am I telling you all of this? It's because it was this line of thinking that led me to hunt cryptids in the first place. It would be insanely easy for something to prey on us. Dogman, werewolves, vampires, reanimated corpses of every shape and variety, as I myself have demonstrated, it's easy. Well, alright, let's get to the Dogman. Let's see, it all started when I was feeling particularly bored. You see, as I mentioned before, I am financially well endowed but not ludicrously so. Everyone has to know their limits. I had been working my way through the American Grand Slam when I realized how ridiculously bored I was. The hunts just weren't holding the same thrill for me as they were before. Let me interrupt your thoughts. This isn't a segue into the most dangerous game. I was just feeling a little under-challenged. I had actually put up my rifles and was hunting brown bear with a traditional bow. The costs of repeat trips to Alaska getting onto the bear and hunting a trophy was in the tens of thousands of dollars, and I just wasn't feeling it. No matter how close I was to the massive creatures, no matter how dangerous they appeared, I just didn't feel challenged. How crazy is that, right? Here are the largest land predators on Earth, and I'm armed with what is essentially a spring and a pointy stick. I don't know. I guess something inside of me had broken. I still loved guns. I could talk all day about a beautiful Ruger Model 1 in .280 Remington that used to bring down all of the deer and one of the caribou species in North America. Or we could admire the 10-gauge Browning Gold I used to pass shoot snow geese and big Canadians. Would you like to hear about the .460 Weatherby I used to put down the Dogman? I bet you would. We'll get there. So there I was, feeling particularly bored. Our friend the op here was out collecting material for some fresh nightmare, and so I just started surfing the web. I was bored with North America. Sure, there was a dangerous game, but I wanted something tumultuous. I wanted to pit myself against something that even with a rifle, it had a really good chance of taking me down. So of course I started looking to Africa. Why not? I had the rifle for it. Not to brag, but the custom shop over at Weatherby does immaculate work. My 460 Weatherby mag. It costs more than a lot of people's cars. Weatherby put that cartridge out in 1957, and for almost 30 years it was the most powerful commercially available rifle in the world. It will stop a charging Cape Buffalo, trust me. Still, something didn't seem right. I wanted that trip to be something special, maybe the trip that would be my last big hurrah. I think a lot of it boiled down to, I was having trouble finding ethical hunts. Now I know a lot of you are pretty incredulous about that, and I may be a lot of things, but I'm no poacher. What happened to 5X is many ways her own fault. Sure, I'll admit to putting her in some precarious situations, but all I did was make the offer. She acted it out every step of the way. I believe in fair chase. I didn't want a canned hunt. I don't shoot fish in a barrel. I didn't want to go hunt something just to kill it. I wanted the thrill of the chase, especially when I knew that something might stalk me back. When I couldn't find something that seemed like a good fit, for whatever reason I started looking at South American hunts. I had been thinking of grabbing 5X and doing some bird hunting with him if work could afford to let me get away. I get 8 weeks of paid vacation per year, but it's rare for me to use even half of it. I made some phone calls and soon enough I was on my way down to South America. I had converted an old break-action H&R 20 gauge to fire tranquilizer dart sabots using ultra-low powder rounds. Luckily, I had very little trouble getting the firearm through customs. That hasn't always been the case. As an American, you never know quite how much freedom you have until you start to visit different parts of the world. The op is also quite the accomplished hunter, and doing some wing shooting together might have been enough to get out of my doldrums. You never know what kind of weird shit you'll get into with this guy around. I was looking through sites when I came across something interesting. A jaguar was attacking livestock in Uruguay. Seems like the locals didn't know what to do since they wanted to protect the feline, but they also didn't want it eating their livestock. Personally, once it had taken something from me, I would have 3S'd the situation and been done with it, but they're endangered, so I can sort of see why they would want to keep it breeding. When I arrived at the village, I checked my gear and went to a little clearing and set up some targets on the edge of town. This brought no end of amusement to the locals. Seeing a guy hold 1-inch groups with a break-action 20 gauge at 50 yards was pretty impressive, it seems. To be honest, I think my eyes are starting to go. Too much time at a desk in front of a computer screen. As a teen using the same iron sights, the villagers would have seen just a large ragged hole. Oh well, none of us live forever, and it was close enough. If I didn't get within 30 yards with these rounds, it wasn't going to matter, the dart might just bounce off. Uruguay has fairly decent gun laws, and some of the villagers were better equipped for jaguar hunting than I was. Then again, I wasn't going out to kill it. Some of the more brash young men wanted me to show them how I had made the tranquilizer loads and to show them how to make some of their own. I showed them. Really, it was no skin off my ass, so why the hell not? I think maybe it was a good way to impress the senoritas. Whatever the case, I showed them. I took a meal with them, and then I stayed in a guest house that had been set aside for me. I wanted to get some sleep so that I could be well rested for tomorrow. Jaguars are mostly nocturnal, and I wanted to scout where it had been hunting during the day. At dinner, the locals had been telling me it had been getting braver. It had been spooking horses, and they have some smaller cattle down there that had recently calved, and were concerned the new baby cows would be too delicious for the predatory cat to stay away from. All of that could wait until the morning. Now it was time to try and rest. I wasn't going to be much good to anyone if I was a zombie and too out of it to track. The locals said they had some dogs, but I really wasn't about to trust some untrained curs with my life. For all I know, they would start barking and scare the cat off before I could get in range. I laid in the bunk provided for me, pulled my hat over my eyes and slowly drifted into a light sleep. I must have only dozed for a couple of hours when I heard a piercing scream. I rushed to the noise, gun in hand. A small group of the locals had converged on the attack site. The big cat had escalated, skipping from calves to kids. A young girl had been taken. The villagers wanted to go track it down, but were fearful of going after the cat in the darkness, and fearful that even after attacking a girl, the government would not look kindly on them hunting and killing the cat. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. "I will go after it," I proclaimed to the group. "There is little hope the child is still alive, but if she is, I will bring her back." And with that, I started into the jungle. It was the worst possible timing. I was dead on my feet, exhausted. The animal had every possible advantage. I was outmatched and outmaneuvered. I was loving it. I was running on pure adrenaline. The only thing keeping me tethered was the yapping of the dogs around me. The villagers had released them thinking they might be of some aid to me. 2 medium-sized dogs, not even lab size, and 1 small one, basically a toy breed. I felt safer already. I had no misconceptions that the child was still alive. Jaguars attack from behind. Unlike other big cats, they crush the brain or the base of the spine when they attack. No suffocation, no chance she was hanging on. Nevertheless, I followed the dogs into the night. The air in the pitch-black jungle was thick and heavy. Strange calls echoed through the night. The 2 larger dogs ahead of me suddenly cut ahead just as I got to a little clearing nearing the edge of the water. Not good. Jaguars are excellent swimmers. They eat the damn caiman if they're in the mood. The small dog next to me had stopped barking and had instead opted to stand beside me shivering. I was about to make my move to the water's edge when I heard it. The first dog went down. There were some brief thrashing and snarls. I can only imagine that the other dog prolonged the suffering of his partner by another couple seconds or so before the lithe attacks of the cat brought it down. With his partner down, the second dog didn't have much of a chance. I heard its snarls for a bit longer before the jaguar's screams of triumph filled the night. I was now alone with a rat dog in the South American jungle with a killer jaguar prowling around. It was exhilarating. The feeling was tremendous. I crouched down against the nearest thick tree and cocked the hammer on the shotgun. The trembling excuse for a dog now huddled up to me pissing itself. There was no way out. The jaguar had us completely surrounded. It could attack from all sides or from above. I could feel its presence more than see or hear it. Death knew I was there, just not my exact position. Any movement from my position would provoke an attack. Staying throughout the night would mean it would wait until I was too tired and weary and then attack. The adrenaline running through my veins was powerful, but it wasn't limitless. That's when it struck me. He was full, and still stalking me. He wasn't attacking out of hunger, at least not anymore. The girl and the 2 dogs would have been meal enough if that had been the case. No, this one was territorial. The dogs and I had invaded their territory. It had found us with the noise we had made and then closed in until its night vision gave it the advantage. I stood up to get a better vantage. The tree wouldn't provide much protection, but hopefully, it would cover my ass long enough for me to figure out how to use its aggression against it. I had to shift my weight to stand up. Fortunately, I stepped on the paw of the dog wannabe. It gave me a pitiful yelp. As if on cue, the jaguar roared in response. The deep-throaty roar into a snarl silenced all of the other nightlife around me. That was it. The dog would give me the edge I needed. Sorry, pup. I stepped on its paw again. The pitiful thing yelped again, but it wouldn't leave my side. As if on cue, the answering roar returned. This time 20 yards away on the opposite side. Damn. It was moving so fast. It was time to make my move. I pulled out road flares I keep in my hunting vest. I always have them in the case to signal or start a fire. I ignited one, then stepped on the dog's tail. Roar. Crack, hiss. Every time it roared from a new position, I lit and threw out a flare in that direction. The bright lights might not hinder its night vision, but it might give me enough light to see for my single shot. I made a half circle around us and then gave the dog a final step. It whimpered hideously, not daring to fight back or even leave. The flares left one path of darkness between us and the jaguar. I turned and walked towards the water. I crouched, waiting for the feline hunter to come for me. I sat there motionless, my gun raised. I scanned the embankment and the water for the sure sign that death was approaching. My breath was shallow, cold sweat dripped all over my body. Something wasn't right. If it was coming this way, what was going on? I had covered all the routes, hadn't I? Then it hit me. As soon as the thought rose half-formed in my mind, I swiveled and fired toward the treetops. Jaguars are great climbers and can pounce from above. Fact, most tranquilizer darts take 10 minutes to act. Fact, most tranquilizer darts use a ketamine cocktail specially measured for the size of the animal. Fact, I am a fucking brilliant engineer and I wasn't going to trade my life for some stupid jungle cat that wanted a piece of my ass. My cocktail is equal parts sedative, tranquilizer, and paralytic. It works faster than you can say, "Hey, does this smell like chloroform?" Fast enough to save my life, but not fast enough to keep the claws of that thing from tearing gashes in my arms. It would take weeks to heal. My heirloom shotgun. Not so lucky. There was no way that my grandfather could know that one day after he gave it to my father would give it to me and years later it would save my life. The damn cat's jaws nearly crushed it. It certainly pinched it tightly enough that I couldn't work the release lever to break it open. I now had a club and an unconscious jaguar. Fucker must have weighed 250 pounds easy. I've had worse drags but none came to mind as tugged on the rope tied around that bastard's throat. Hot sticky blood occasionally would trickle out of my arm wounds. All in all, I was less than a half-mile from the village. I've dragged deer for miles uphill and didn't feel as exhausted as I returned to the village. When I got to the village I found the mother and father of a girl. I gave them my hunting knife and pointed them at the cat. They had the right to the first refusal after all. Her mother stabbed it while wailing. I passed out. Lucky me, they treated me with real medicine. Nice stinging iodine in my open cuts. I swear if I hadn't been unconscious I would have died of shock. 2.5 days I laid there barely moving. If I had been one of the villagers I would have taken bets. When I woke up, I was ravenous. They had memorialized the girl and peace had returned to the village. I didn't see her parents nor any sign of the jaguar. I'm guessing they figured out how to shoot, shovel and shut up after all. That night there was a feast. They had slaughtered a calf for the whole village. A sado, I think it was called. It was excellent. I forgot how good cooking over real wood tastes. Afterward, the village witch doctor, for lack of a better term, made kalska. I've never tripped before, it was quite the experience. I saw things that I've never known. The shaman guided me. He showed me things I could never dream of. At the height of my journey, I saw them. Cryptids, creatures, and beasts of all sorts. Mainly, I saw dogmen. I saw packs of them. I saw them in places I knew and places I didn't. Places I've hunted since I was a child. I floated just beyond their perception, though, they may have sensed me. I saw myself fighting the jaguar while I saw the dogman. That's when I knew. No more boredom for me. I had to hunt cryptids. I had to hunt a dogman.